All right, hey everyone, it's Jason from C Squared Racing, and we got a pretty positive response from our videos on iRacing. Both our video about how to set it up and how to get started in sim racing in general, which specifically did kind of focus on iRacing, but also our video on the review of the iRacing AI and how it compared to reality in terms of racing against real competition, which was always iRacing's forte with its online multiplayer support. So I wanted to look at another one of the simulator alternatives that are out there that's readily available to people, and that's Grid Autosport. Um, this is sold more as a game than as a professional racing training system, the way, say, iRacing or R Factor 2 or ACC is. But I wanted to see what it was like because I've heard that this is something that people have used in simulator training before. So I'd also heard that it had a more accurate version of Indianapolis Motor Speedway. As you'll find out, it doesn't. It's got the same issues that iRacing does, but because of that, I wanted to try it because that's my home track and that's a track I've driven in real life. I haven't driven Hockenheim and Silverstone, so when I want to see if a simulator feels real to me, I want to drive a course that I've actually driven. So that's when I'll use IMS or Watkins Glen, something that I'm familiar with in my real life. So that's what I want to do today. We're gonna pop in the Indianapolis Motor Speedway road course and uh, see, does this feel realistic enough that if I were getting ready to go back to that track and race again, that I could use this to practice, or is this more just a fun game for race game enthusiasts to play? And there's nothing wrong with that if that's what it is. That's perfectly fine. There's a lot of really great racing games out there, like Forza or Gran Turismo, that I would not recommend to somebody who is training for a real race. But if you're someone that's just looking for a fun game experience that is relatively realistic, you don't want to play Mario Kart type games, those are fantastic. And so I imagine this is going to at least be at that level. But because I'd heard that some pro racers had messed around with it, I wanted to see, is this something that reaches up into that level of being potentially a competitor with programs like iRacing. So we're going to hop into it. I'm going to show you some time trial where I'm just driving the track by myself, trying to set a good lap time, and trying to get an idea of how I feel the physics model is, how I feel the track is modeled, the way the game settings are, how it integrates with my wheel and pedal set, and things like that. And then, we'll also hop into an actual race and we'll see how that AI feels. Do I feel like does it feel like real competition? And again, I've raced on that track with real competition, and I want to see, does this feel like that, or does it feel more like the video games I've played in the past, where the AI generally does certain things wrong. We talked about it a little bit in the iRacing game, where it tends to have trouble getting through corners in a pack, things like that. It tends to behave erratically in some cases. So we'll see if it does some of that, or if they've got it tuned in to feel like it uses a certain amount of actual race logic and performs the way you would expect a real driver to perform in a race. So let's hop into it and find out. We are, by the way, using the Steam version of the software, so I don't believe it's going to be any different if you're playing on Steam or through a standalone PC copy. But I don't know if say the Nintendo Switch, or if there's an Xbox or PlayStation version available. I don't know if the experience is going to be any different there. Generally, games like this tend to be the same across all platforms in terms of the interface, but sometimes there are some differences in how the game plays because it has to interface with different types of controllers and things like that. So I don't know about that. We're specifically going to be looking at the PC version played through Steam, and we'll see how that works. So your experience may vary. If you've got any input that you want to share with people, go ahead and leave a comment below the video. I'd be interested to hear what you think and what your experience is. Maybe you've played it longer than me. Maybe you figured out how to fix some of the issues, or maybe you've experienced issues that I didn't pick up on. Or maybe you can recommend that maybe it's better on a platform than it is on the PC, anything like that. Love to hear what your opinions are. Go ahead and comment. And while you're at it, go ahead and like and subscribe to the channel as well. We appreciate your support. So without further ado, let's hop into it. So as we go around this course, I'll show you a couple of the differences between this and the real course. For one, this is the old F1 layout. So if you were in an Indy car, you would actually turn left here, but that part of the track doesn't exist. Instead, we go around this, something that some of us refer to as the SECA loop, because the Trans Am guys use it. And another thing is there's this grass patch right there. Normally you'd be able to go out into that area and use that as a runoff, and that would be fair game for drivers, but this game puts grass there for some reason, and I don't think there's ever really been grass there. This part feels pretty accurate. You do have to take it easy through there. This part feels pretty good. It opens up pretty early, so you can get on the gas right away and start upshifting. This is the other big problem with this layout, is that normally you would take a right there and go back into the infield. And in this game, along with iRacing, they still use this oval turn 1. And that's not used anymore. They stopped using it after F1 stopped coming to Indy. Of course, a big part of that was the debacle in 2005, where the Michelin tires that F1 used couldn't handle the cornering loads at that turn, so they don't use that anymore. I'm in the wrong gear there. It's difficult to drive and commentate at the same time, so apologize for my driving here, but yeah, so a couple different layout things that are wrong. Now, the layout I drove when I competed here did involve this loop, but IndyCar does not use it. I don't believe NASCAR is going to use it either when they run here on the road course. I will say track limits seem reasonable. You're allowed to cut the corners in the places where I should be allowed to cut the corners. But if you go too far, it will yell at you and give you a penalty. I've also noticed that as you come off of turns onto these high-speed straights, you get this shimmy in the rear. As I come off this turn, there's going to be a shimmy in the rear that seems to be common with a lot of the cars in this game, and it's very uncomfortable to drive with it. You can probably see in my hands I'm doing a lot of corrections. I don't know how to get rid of it. I've messed with it in the setup, and it does it no matter what I do. So I don't know if that's just an issue in the physics model. It feels like the car is loose, but the car doesn't want to spin. In fact, I've noticed that in this game, when you do get to the point where you feel like you should be spinning out, where you make a mistake and the car really wants to go around, the game kind of straightens you out. I do have traction control turned on in this game, but not stability control. So I don't know, it's weird. There's times where I feel like really I should have completely spun out, and I didn't. But when you do start to go around, the game sort of catches you, and I don't have any kind of helps or cheats turned on. The game just seems like it does that. So it's this weird sensation of being unsettled, and yet you never spin out. This is a definite trail-breaking course. Getting a nice smooth flow through the turns is really important. If you can get in a good rhythm, it feels very good to drive through some of these corners. And if you get out of that rhythm, it feels very bad. It's not a comfortable course to drive if you're not smooth. The section here actually does feel pretty good. It's a challenging section of the course, but again, if you do it properly, it feels very rewarding to get a good time through here. That feels a lot like the real track. The part feels right. But again, here it seems like again the car wants to slide a lot. There's a lot of side-to-side grip issues, and then you get that shimmy down the straightaway too. So I don't know how to fix that. You're limited to what you can change in the setup in this game. One thing that really bothered me, you can't change any air pressure settings. You're just stuck with the tires you're stuck with. You can't change the compound, you can't change the air pressure, camber adjustments, nothing like that. So all you can do is soft or stiff suspension, and you can change that individually between the rear and the front of the car, but that's it. You can't make adjustments to specific corners, so you're pretty limited. So if you're someone that likes to get into one of these games and really fiddle with the mechanics, this is gonna be pretty limiting to you. I did not hit that very well. Like I said, when you don't hit that turn complex just right, it just feels awful. Something else I'll talk about is the force feedback. You can't do much with it. You can basically turn it on or off and set a percentage strength. It feels very... It's just sort of a constant pressure, a constant resistance that it puts on the wheel. I can't feel that it necessarily gets harder in the corners. It doesn't feel very realistic. It's certainly better than trying to drive without it. I've tried driving with no force feedback, and it's very weird. The wheel, this particular wheel, is way too loose. So it's better than not having it, but it's not good. It doesn't feel real. It's definitely not. If you're used to iRacing, it's not going to feel as nice as iRacing. Setting up the wheel in this game was a bit of a challenge too, and at the end of this video we'll go through the process for how you actually get this set up if you're playing Grid on Steam. If you're using another service, it probably isn't too difficult. Hopefully it just detects it, but by default it didn't want to use this wheel, and it took me about an hour of searching on the internet to figure out how to get it to recognize the wheel. Essentially, Steam won't, but the game will. Yeah, the settings for the wheel, too. When you get into the game, you're going to want to go in and reconfigure the wheel after you've turned it on. The game won't remember your settings, apparently, at least on mine, it doesn't seem to. But it wants to use the full rotation of the wheel. It wants to put in pretty large dead zones. The buttons are not going to be mapped correctly, so accelerating and braking are not going to be mapped to your pedals. They're going to be mapped to buttons. At least that's the way it is on this G920 that I have. So we'll go through all that at the end of the video too, and kind of show you how to set it up. At least with the setup that I have. I don't know if it's going to be that different for if you have a Thrustmaster or Fanatec system. But it's very annoying that the system won't save those settings. So every time I load this, I have to reload those settings. So I've been talking a lot about the track, and it's really difficult to put down a good lap when I'm talking because my focus is just taken away from what I'm doing. And I'm missing shifts, and I'm missing my turn-in points and things like that. So I'm going to be quiet for a bit here, and we'll see. See, that's my point. But you also notice that I should have spun out there, and I didn't. That game straightened me out. That was not me saving the car. That was the game wanting to keep you going. So I don't like that in a simulator. I guess if you're just looking for a game, that's maybe good. But if you're looking for a serious simulator, that's not going to cut it. But I'm going to be quiet for the next lap or two, and we're going to see if I can put down a good time without goofing up. This is not a real perfect lap, but it's quick. Let's see where it comes out. 128.37. That's not bad. Well, that wasn't my my cleanest lap, but it was my fastest lap. So we'll leave it there as far as the on-track stuff. Now let me show you the settings, and then maybe we'll take a look at what it's like in an actual race and not just doing time trials. Okay, so we're in the what they call the paddock area here, and this is still in the time trial settings, but it allows me to go through the various options. So the first one is vehicle tuning, and as I said, you're pretty limited here as to what you can do. You've got some brake bias settings, differential, downforce, gear ratios, and your suspension, and that's it. I tweaked them just a little bit. For the most part, I wasn't running too different from the default. I played around with them, and I didn't really notice a big difference. Maybe if you get towards the extreme end, you start to notice something, but I didn't get that fine-tuned kind of feel where I felt like small adjustments was making a big difference. Some of that could just be that I'm not familiar enough with the car to be that precise just yet. The Peugeot 408 is new to me. I've never simulated it until this game, so maybe I just don't know the particulars of the car well enough to fine-tune it. But it would be awfully nice if gear ratios shouldn't be a single setting. You should be able to tune each gear individually. I should be able to tune the suspension, not just soft or stiff, not just the spring stiffness, but also camber, caster, things like that, for each individual corner, not just front and rear. I should be able to change the air pressures on each of the tires. So it's disappointing that in a game that is really intended to be realistic, that they take a lot of that away from you. That's disappointing. The other thing was in the options, under controls. This is what I have to do each and every time I play the game. It never saves these settings. I have to go in and remap all of these, like accelerate and brake. You think that it would know enough to default those to your pedals, but of course it doesn't know what system you have hooked up. So you have to come in here and tell it which is your gas and brake pedal. There's no default setting, and once you exit the game, it's going to forget that. You're going to have to set it up again. I don't know if that's just an issue with the Steam version, if you were playing this on a console. Some of you, I guess you guys could tell me in the comments if that works better in the consoles. But definitely in Steam, I've had to reset that every time. And they also give you these button numbers. 2, 10, 7, 1. I don't know what button 2 is. I have no idea what that's mapped to. It's not the 2 key on the keyboard, that's for sure. It's button 2, whatever it thinks the button number 2 is on your joystick. And I think on the G920, that is there's Xbox style controls on the wheel, A, B, X, Y buttons, and I believe buttons 1, 2, 3, and 4 mapped to those, but I'd have to actually check that to see. So you got a few things, some view settings, some radio related settings. Not a whole lot. It doesn't take more than a minute to reset those every time. It's just annoying. It's just something you shouldn't have to do in a game. Vibration, this is essentially all you get for force feedback. It's either on or off and then a percentage. I had it set at about 60%. 60% felt okay, felt somewhat realistic. But the vibration profile doesn't feel realistic. And what I mean by that is it just feels like it's always giving you a constant resistance on the wheel. It doesn't feel situational. So when I'm in a corner, hard cornering, I don't feel like I get the feedback from the wheel that makes me feel like I'm in that scenario. It just always kind of gives you a general resistance, but it's better than nothing. Turning it off feels very weird. At least to me it does, because I'm used to force feedback. Gameplay settings, not much here. Just what you want on your HUD, the different information that you want. Camera shake. I haven't really played with camera shake. I didn't notice a whole lot, I guess. Maybe that's good because I wasn't hitting things. Audio is just your typical audio settings. You can turn certain things up or down, and then graphic settings. This game isn't too graphic intensive. Even with my capture running, it's pretty smooth. I'm running it on an older computer with capture software, and it's still pretty good frame rate. So you can probably go ahead and set the graphic settings pretty high. But it's nice. I will say it's nice that you can change that on the fly. I don't have to exit out of my event to change that. And then your difficulty settings is where you can turn on your cheats and change your transmission if you want to go automatic. Another thing I'm disappointed in with this being a simulator is that I have a H pattern gear shift that goes along with the Logitech G Series, and this is what I prefer to use because I use a stick style transmission in cars that I drive in real life. So from what I can tell in Grid Autosport, it's paddle or nothing. That's the way I suppose I could map it and make it a sequential stick. I could tell it that the two of the gear settings are upshift, downshift, but I can't ask it to go specifically first gear, second gear, third gear. All I can do is a sequential up or down. So if you're driving a car that's got a traditional stick shift, you're not going to be able to simulate it in this game. You're not going to be able to practice that. So, which is disappointing because other than that, it seems like it's pretty good. I mean, I noticed that my shift points in the game were where I expected them to be. I shifted here where I would normally shift in real life, so pretty accurate. Obviously, that'll differ a little bit with with your gear settings, in your specific car. But shifting felt realistic to me. I just wish I could have shifted with an H pattern. Now, not to say that some of these cars probably normally would have paddle shifters, excuse me, but it would be nice if you had the option. So, traction control, ABS, I had those turned on. I didn't notice a big difference between when they were on, when they were off. I didn't try and turn stability control on to see if maybe that would help get rid of that shimmy, but it's not something you normally would have turned on a race car, even if it was an option. Steering assist, cornering assist, if you're a beginner, I didn't try those. It's not something I use since I'm more experienced, so I don't know. Once you get used to not having them, turning them on feels like the game is fighting you. instead of just letting you drive. So I never turn those on anymore. But if you're someone who's just a beginner gamer and you want to learn, those are there if you need them. But I can't speak to how much they help. And then HUD, racing line on or off, helps. It gives you not only the racing line, but it shows you dynamically whether or not you need to brake. So if you're going into a corner, if you're going too fast in that corner, it'll show up red. If you don't need to slow down, it'll show it as green. So it helps you judge your braking. So that's good to learn. If you're not familiar with a track or not familiar with a car, it helps you understand where you need to brake and how hard you need to brake going into a corner. I had that turned off, but that's helpful. Sometimes I'll use that if I'm, like I said, if it's a new track or a new car for me, I'll turn that on just, maybe for a few laps until I get comfortable with the brake authority that I have available to me in that particular vehicle. And then camera position, if you want to lock it to an interior camera, so that as you cycle through there's a button that you can map to your wheel that will change the view settings if you don't want to have to cycle through exterior. But there's only 2 interior, and it's basically really close to the windshield and then back. We use the one that was further back for this video. So I don't know why I'm not someone that cycles through views when I'm racing. I stick it on the cockpit camera and that's it. So again, they're missing. They've got a lot of settings here I don't think you need, and they're missing a lot of them that I think you do need for this to be a serious simulator. So, that's my take on it. I think it's a fun game, but I wouldn't put this ahead of Forza. I haven't played the newer Forza, but I played a lot of that before I get into iRacing, and I thought Forza was pretty good. I like Forza, even the older ones, a lot better than this. Maybe even Gran Turismo. And definitely, if you're looking for a serious simulator, this is not going to replace iRacing at all. It's a game. It's fun to play. It's going to give you a quasi-realistic feel. It's better than Need for Speed, but it's not going to be something that if I was training, I don't think I would want to have to rely on this to train. I would much rather go with something more realistic, like iRacing or R Factor or something like that. So, but we'll see what's it like in a race. So let's hop out of time trial mode and let's see what it looks like when you're in a race. Okay, so we're gonna do a quick 5-lap race. Same car that I was just doing the time trials with. We're gonna stick with the same circuit. Now that I've gotten comfortable with it, I don't know if it changed. It probably didn't keep any of my settings. So let's go into tuning, and of course not. So. I didn't notice that there was a big difference in a lot of these. I think I had the suspension a bit stiffer. I think I had the downforce turned up a bit. We'll just do that. I don't think I did a whole lot. Vehicle upgrades. See, this is where it starts to get a little silly. I don't even know what this is, but yeah, this is not realistic. I could live without that in a game. Alright, looks like I'm starting towards the back in 12th. 16 cars. Okay. Not getting through the turns. Ugh. Yeah, I mean, if you watched my video on iRacing AI, you noticed that one of the things that I was always worried about was that when you went into a turn, everybody would essentially just stand on the brakes, and it feels like that's doing that here. I slowed down a lot more than I normally would going through a corner, and I still went right into the back of somebody. And then another car that was on my inside just drove me straight off into the grass.
We're chasing the pack.
So yeah, the AI in this game, not not even as good as what iRacing's is. But you just lose so much momentum through here, slowing down for everybody, and you can't get by them because it's just such a narrow section of track. It's not a place where you're really able to pass, but they slow you down so much you lose all your momentum. That can be very frustrating. So
you've set the fastest lap this race.
this racing so far, it feels like they're more than happy to slam around into each other. A lot of side-to-side contact. See, same thing through here. Everybody just backs up. You can't get by anybody because they're too wide. It's very frustrating. I would never really drive like this in a real car. But it's just the only way in this game because of the way the opposition drives. Which, I mean, he just went around me completely off the course. That is not really the track, but he went around me there. And I don't know where he got that boost of speed either, because I was flat out. Alright, everyone, so that's Grid Autosport. Final verdict. Fun game. Maybe not the most accurate in terms of simulation, but not bad. You know, there's a wide range of simulation options between iRacing and Mario Kart, and this definitely falls somewhere in that range. Probably more along the lines of a Gran Turismo or a Forza, but honestly, if I was going to spend my money, I would probably spend it on a Gran Turismo or a Forza before I would get Grid Autosport. So it's not terrible. You're going to get your money's worth out of it, as long as your expectations are reasonable. Like I said, don't use it for training. Just have some fun with it. If you got a wheel and you want to use it, it's not a waste of money. But be realistic. You know, it's got some issues with it. I don't like the fact that it doesn't save my settings. I don't like the fact that the options for setting up your car are extremely limited. I don't like that the tire model doesn't feel realistic. It feels like your car is constantly sliding, and you can't do anything to fix that. I don't like the fact that the force feedback really is kind of like an on-off, and it isn't very dynamic, so that doesn't feel very realistic. But at least it has it. It has force feedback, which is better than nothing. So that's Grid Autosport. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. I hope it helped. I hope it helped you make your decision about whether or not you want to try it or not try it. You know, if you love this game, you know, that's great. It's not without, you know, it's fun, but it's for certain people and it's not for others. So if you love this game, hey, keep playing it. It's fun. I mean, I'm not gonna get rid of it. I'm gonna keep it on this machine. I'm gonna play it every now and then when I want to do something a little bit different, when I want to feel something that's, you know, not iRacing. But if I'm getting ready for something, if I'm trying to practice and trying to keep my skills sharp, I'll stick with I'll probably stick with iRacing, honestly. So iRacing's not perfect either. It's got its issues. All of the different simulators do. They've all got their strengths and weaknesses. I'm disappointed that I've yet to find a simulator that has Indianapolis Motor Speedway's road course modeled correctly. I was told that originally what got me interested in Grid was that they said that this one had the modern road course, but it doesn't. It's got the same. It's got the motorcycle GP track, which they run in the opposite direction. It's got the oval. It's got the track that we ran, the old F1 configuration, and then it's got this weird configuration where you run sort of the inverse of the infield road course. You run essentially oval turn 4 to oval turn 2, and then you run the infield road course, which is kind of weird. So I haven't tried that, but it's a little something different, I guess. But I'm going to leave it there, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. Hope everybody takes care, and I'll see you on the next lap, guys. So I mentioned that I wanted to show everybody how to go ahead and get the wheel set up in Grid Autosport. So if you're using Steam, this is for folks that are using Steam, you have to use this big screen mode. Is that what they call it? Let me go back here. If you're in the Steam interface, you'll see up here at the top, big picture mode, excuse me. There is this little triangle symbol with a couple of arrows, and you click on that, and that takes you to this interface. And this is what you need to use if you're going to use certain controllers. And you can go into settings once you're in this mode. I have to get back out of my library. Here we go. This is the screen you'll actually start in. You go up to the little gear icon for settings, and I think that music in the background is the game trying to play, and it's having some trouble, so apologize for that. But once you're into the settings mode, you come over here and you go to controller settings, and you'll see it says no controllers detected, and you have these options for different configuration support concepts. And the key here is to have these configuration support boxes unchecked, and don't worry that this says no controller detected. That doesn't matter, and that's what stops a lot of people, is they think that they haven't succeeded because it says that. The trick is to ignore that. Once you ignore that and you go back into the game, and it's already running, so hopefully this just kicks us into the interface. So we'll let this load, and then this brings you into this interface, and it's windowed here. We can make this a little bit bigger. Oh, that looks terrible. Oh, okay, it does adjust. Once you're into the start screen here, this is the main screen where you select your different race modes and things like that. You go into options and extras, and then you go down to options again. And then you go into controls, and this is not obvious, but you go down to choose preset, and here it only says keyboard. Once you have your wheel and pedal set up, I don't have mine set up at the moment. I'll be honest, I forgot to film this part, and I had to come back afterwards and do this, so I've already disconnected my wheel from the computer. But if once you have it plugged in, it will show up under controls preset, and you'll see it'll say keyboard. I don't know why it says keyboard twice, but underneath that it'll say direct control device or something to that effect, and that's your wheel, and that's what you pick. So I don't think I can. Let me see if I can plug it in and see if it shows up. Try and drag this over. I'm going to try and plug this in. I'm going to see if it actually shows up. Maybe you'll hear in the background it's my wheel going through its startup. Let's see. Okay, so I backed out of it and came back in, and sure enough, direct input device. You'll select direct input device. It'll say it'll overwrite your current settings. I think this is why you have to change your mapping every single time. And then it'll give you this default mapping, and this is not probably what you're going to want. If you have a G920, it's definitely not what you're going to want. It's got accelerate and brake mapped to buttons. You need to map it to a Z-axis. But that's how you do it. So if you do want to try Grid Autosport with a wheel and pedal set, Don't worry if you're trying to play it through Steam and it's telling you that nothing's connected. Just go ahead, uncheck those boxes in the controller settings, and go into the game. And then once you're into the game, if your hardware is working correctly, you'll see that it will give you that option under choose preset for direct input device. And that's how you do it. So if you've been struggling trying to figure it out, thinking that your hardware is broken or thinking that your software is not working, don't worry. It's a weird, quirky thing. I don't know why it's like this. It feels like something that Valve probably should fix with their Steam interface, since the Logitech devices are pretty standard, wheel and pedal sets for people to use with racing games. So I don't know why they don't support it. I don't know, but the game does. So don't worry, don't sweat it. Just go ahead and follow those steps, and you'll be able to use your wheel and pedal just fine.